Welcome to the Sci-Fi Story. Here you find the best HFY story written by human. Listen the story. If you like it, subscribe the channel.
The impact came like a cosmic punch to the gut. One moment, Ethan was cruising through deep space, his ship humming with quiet efficiency, and the next alarms fire, and an abrupt realization that today was in fact not going to be his day. He barely had time to register the warning signs before the hull was compromised. The ship buckled as the gravitational pull of the planet below yanked it into a violent descent. Ethan's fingers danced over the console, but nothing responded. The control system was fried, the thrusters dead. He was officially a passenger on a one-way trip to an unknown world. Okay, he muttered to himself as the ship rattled violently. Not ideal, not ideal. The atmosphere hit like a brick wall, flames engulfing the remains of his vessel. The cockpit temperature spiked, and for a fleeting moment Ethan entertained the thought that maybe, just maybe, he should have paid more attention to emergency protocols. Instead of trying to make his co-pilot laugh during training, the ship spiraled, the surface of the planet rushing up to meet him through the fractured windshield. He caught a glimpse of an alien landscape, a vast, endless stretch of bioluminescent forests pulsing in shades of deep blues and purples. Strange, twisting rock formations jutted out from the terrain like frozen lightning bolts. It was breathtaking. Not that he had much time to admire it. The ground came up fast. Ethan braced for impact, and then everything went black. He was floating, no, not floating, being carried. His brain felt like it had been replaced with static, his body aching in ways he hadn't thought possible. He could smell something earthy with a faint metallic tang. The sensation of movement registered next, slow and deliberate. Ethan forced his eyes open. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, because standing over him, cradling him like he weighed nothing, was the most impossibly beautiful woman he had ever seen. Well, woman adjacent, she had the general humanoid structure: 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that was alarmingly symmetrical, but her features were otherworldly. Her skin was smooth, almost luminous in the faint glow of the alien moon. Her long silver eyes shimmered in the dim light, reflecting things he couldn't comprehend. And then there were her ears, long and delicate, twitching slightly as she walked. Ethan had many questions, chief among them, am I dead? He groaned, his voice hoarse. Her gaze snapped down to him. You are awake to find. Awake, he rasped, because I feel like I got hit by, oh right, the planet. Her expression remained unreadable, though he swore something flickered across her face, mild amusement. Curiosity, he couldn't tell. You are fortunate, she said, continuing to carry him through what appeared to be a vast bioluminescent jungle. Your body was broken, but I repaired it. Ethan frowned, shifting slightly in her grip. His whole body ached, but now that he was paying attention, the pain was dulled, as if it had been blunted, softened. He was functional despite what should have been fatal injuries. Well, what do you mean repaired? He asked, suddenly very aware that he was alive when he very much shouldn't be. Like alien surgery, space magic. I accelerated your cellular regeneration, she said, as if that was a perfectly normal sentence to say. Ethan blinked. Oh, cool, no big deal, just casually breaking the laws of biology. She ignored his sarcasm, carrying him effortlessly through the jungle. He wasn't sure whether he should be grateful or deeply concerned. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, Ethan said carefully, but where are we going? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she adjusted her grip on him effortlessly, like he weighed nothing, and continued walking. Then, in the same calm, measured tone, she said, to my home. Ethan exhaled. Right, of course. Makes total sense. He glanced up at the alien sky, the twin moons casting an eerie glow over the landscape. And just to clarify, you're not planning to eat me, right? Because that would really put a damper on my whole being alive thing. She looked down at him again, her silver eyes unreadable. Then, after a pause, she said, no, not super convincing, but I'll take it. She didn't seem particularly interested in reassuring him further. Instead, she carried him deeper into the jungle, navigating effortlessly through thick, towering plants that pee with strange bioluminescence. The air smelled different here, fresher, richer, but tinged with something unfamiliar. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a clearing. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Nestled within the jungle was a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't built, it grew. The walls smooth and organic, pulsed faintly with energy, as though the entire building was alive. Strange symbols were etched into its surface. Softly, the entrance parted as they approached, the material shifting fluidly, like liquid metal. Okay, Ethan muttered, so this is officially the weirdest day of my life. The alien woman stepped inside, carrying him through a hallway lined with more glowing symbols. The walls felt aware, like they were subtly reacting to their presence. Eventually, she set him down on something that could only loosely be described as a bed. It was warm and slightly soft, like memory foam made out of living tissue. Ethan decided not to think too hard about that. She straightened, regarding him with that same unreadable expression. You will rest now. Ethan sat up, slightly wincing. Yeah, about that. I appreciate the whole not letting me die thing, but you are mine now. Ethan's brain short-circuited. I'm sorry. What? Her silver eyes met his, calm and unwavering. I saved your life by the laws of my people. You now belong to me. Ethan blinked, then blinked again. Okay, he said slowly. See, that's a sentence that needs some serious clarification. Her expression remained serene. There is no need for clarification. A life saved is a life claimed. You are mine now. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temples. You're telling me I survived a ship crash, was miraculously healed by an alien, and now I'm some kind of what, space husband, cosmic rescue pet? Her long ears twitched. I do not know what a pet is. Great, that makes me feel so much better. She tilted her head slightly. Would you rather I had left you to die? Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it, then sighed. I feel like you're really backing me into a corner here. Silence stretched between them. Then, after a long pause, she said, rest. You will need your strength for what? Ethan asked wearily. She turned, walking toward the exit. Over her shoulder, she simply said, to learn what it means to be mine. And with that, she was gone. Ethan collapsed back onto the strange living bed, staring at the ceiling. Well, he muttered to himself, that's concerning. Ethan woke up to the unsettling sensation of being watched. For a moment, he forgot where he was. His brain was still catching up, sluggishly sorting through the events of the last however long it had been. Spaceship crash, near-death, alien jungle, tall, silvery woman who apparently owned him now, right? That whole thing. He groaned and rubbed his face, only to freeze when he finally processed what his groggy brain had already registered. Sierra was sitting beside the strange pulsing bed, staring at him, not casually, not in a polite "oh you're awake" kind of way. No, this was intense. Her silver eyes were locked onto him with an unnerving amount of focus, like she was studying him, analyzing his every breath, his every twitch. Ethan cleared his throat. A morning. She didn't blink. You did not wake during the night. He blinked back. I usually don't. Tilted her head, her long ears twitching slightly. Your body required complete rest to continue the healing process. It is good that you obeyed. Yeah, I totally meant to obey, Ethan muttered, sitting up and stretching his muscles. Ached, but it was the kind of ache that told him he was in one piece. Considering how he'd been a broken mess of a human not long ago, he figured that was a win. So how long were you just sitting there watching me? Didn't hesitate all night. Ethan coughed. All night. She nodded. Right, that's not weird at all, he muttered under his breath. I was worrying your well-being, she said simply. It is my duty. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his already messy hair. Listen, I appreciate the whole not letting me die thing, really A+ work, but we might need to have a little talk about personal space. SRA blinked slowly, like he'd just spoken in an alien dialect, which, to be fair, he might as well have. You belong to me, she reminded him, as if that cleared up everything. Yes. See, that's the part I keep tripping over. Ethan said, waving a hand. You keep saying that like it's normal, and I'm over here struggling with the whole people owning people concepts. Regarded him with that same unreadable calm. Then she stood, her long, fluid movements eerily graceful. You will understand in time. Ethan frowned. Okay. See, that sounds ominous. Can you elaborate? You must be prepared again. Ominous is turned to leave, but before she reached the doorway, if the strange shifting walls of the structure could even be called that, she glanced back at him. Come, there is much to learn. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. I love cryptic morning briefings. Still, curiosity and a healthy dose of self-preservation drove him to his feet. His legs were steady, which was impressive considering how wrecked he'd been. He flexed his fingers, marveling at how normal he felt, all things considered. As far as waking up in an alien's house scenarios went, he figured he was having one of the better experiences. Stepping outside was an entirely new experience Ethan had seen. The planet's surface through the cracked window of his burning ship, but seeing it up close in daylight was something else. The air was crisp, cool, and laced with the faint scent of something metallic. The sky stretched high above in swirling shades of violet and blue, twin suns casting an eerie but beautiful glow over the landscape. The jungle surrounding Sci's home pulsed with life. Towering trees with translucent leaves shimmered in the sunlight, their branches twisting in ways that seemed almost intentional. Strange floating organisms drifted lazily through the air, glowing softly. And the ground was slightly too soft, like it was considering whether or not it wanted to be solid. Ethan stopped mid-step, lifting his foot experimentally. The earth beneath him subtly adjusted, shifting like it was aware of his presence. "So that's normal, huh?" he muttered, glanced back at him. "The planet is alive in ways you do not yet understand." Ethan sighed. Awesome. Love a good scent planet that never goes badly for anyone's either ignored or chose not to acknowledge his sarcasm. Instead, she gestured toward a clearing up ahead. "There is a rule," she said, her voice calm yet absolute. "A life saved is a life claimed." "Yeah, we've covered that," Ethan said, crossing his arms, not super jazzed about the whole ownership angle. By the ways met his gaze, unblinking. "Would you rather I release you?" Ethan hesitated. That was a loaded question. He hadn't exactly planned what would happen next. What did release even mean? Was that an option? Would she just let him go? "What happens if you do?" he asked wearily. Studied him for a long moment before responding. "You would be alone." Ethan frowned. "Right, okay. Well, that's not ideal. This world is not kind to those who wander without purpose. Ethan considered that sure, he could demand his independence, insist on figuring things out himself, but let's be real, he barely survived crashing here. Did he really think he'd do better on his own? Still, he wasn't quite ready to admit that out loud. He cleared his throat. "So, what exactly does being yours entail? Like, are we talking bodyguard duty, personal assistant? Because if I'm expected to do laundry, I have some bad news about my domestic skills." Cirque's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "You will learn," she said again with the cryptic answers. Ethan muttered. He followed as she led him deeper into the jungle. The trees loomed high overhead, their massive roots twisting like serpents through the soil. Strange creatures scurried between the branches, some with too many eyes, others with not enough eyes. The air hummed with energy, the bioluminescent flora responding to their presence. Ethan exhaled. "Okay, fine. Teach me your ways." Mysterious alien ladies stopped in her tracks, turning to face him fully. "You misunderstand," she said, silver eyes gleaming. "I will not teach you." Ethan frowned. Then who?" The ground beneath him suddenly shifted. "No, not the ground, something under the ground." A deep reverberating growl echoed through the air. Ethan's stomach dropped. That didn't sound friendly. Cirque's expression remained calm. "You must learn to survive. You're not about to throw me into a trial by alien monster situation, are you?" Didn't answer. The ground shook harder. Ethan groaned. "Of course you are." Ethan had about 3 seconds to process his situation before the ground beneath him exploded. A massive creature, if creature was even the right word, erupted from the earth like a nightmare given form. Its body was a shipping mass of chitin and muscle, sleek black carapace glistening in the alien sunlight. 4 legs, no 6, dug into the soft terrain, and its head an unsettling combination of mandibles, and too many eyes swiveled in his direction. Ethan did the only thing a rational human would do. He screamed. "What the hell is that?" Sir, standing perfectly still beside him, tilted her head. "It is a Vorak." "Oh, cool. Yeah, that totally helps." Ethan shot back, scrambling backward, as the Vorak let out a deep bone-rattling growl. "I was worried I was about to be eaten by something without a name." The Vorak's mandibles clicked. The ground trembled beneath its clawed feet. Ethan turned to S, panic rising. "Okay, so any chance we're running because I vote?" "Running?" She didn't move. "No, okay, see, that's the wrong answer." Sci finally met his gaze. "You must prove yourself." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Oh, come on." The Vori lunged. Ethan reacted on pure adrenaline, rolling to the side, just as a massive claw slammed into the ground where he'd been standing. Dirt and bioluminescent plant matter flew into the air. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding so hard he was sure it was trying to leave his body. I am not built for this. You are stronger than you believe. That's great and all, but maybe let's believe that after I don't get eaten. The Vorx snarled and lunged again, its mandibles snapping. Ethan barely dodged, feeling the rush of displaced air as its claws rayed past him. He had no weapon, no plan, and most importantly, no idea why this was happening. He ducked behind a tree, panting. So just checking, do I actually have to kill this thing, or can I don't know, politely inconvenience it until it gives up? SI remained completely unbothered. You must best, it's super helpful, really just stellar coaching. The VR slammed into the tree with enough force to crack the bark. Ethan yelped and scrambled away. He needed a plan. He had no plan unless he glanced up. The jungle canopy was thick, the trees stretching high above like twisted glowing veins. The Vorek was big, powerful, but not exactly built for agility. If Ethan could get high enough, maybe, just maybe, he could turn the terrain again against it, which meant step one, don't die. The Vorek lunged again. Ethan ran. His muscles screamed in protest, but whatever weird healings had done to him was holding up. He was faster than he should have been, his body moving with an ease that felt almost unnatural. He vaulted over a thick rot, using the momentum to scramble up the nearest tree. The Vorek roared below, slamming into the trunk. Ethan climbed higher, gripping the twisting branches for support. The tree groaned, but held. Okay, cool. Step one, survive, he muttered. Step two, still working on it. The VOR, unwilling to be outdone by a tree-climbing primate, clawed at the base of the trunk, mandible snapping. Ethan eyed the branches. If he could get the thing to lunge at the right moment, he shifted his weight, testing the flexibility of a thick finnick limb above him. It bent, but didn't break. Good. Hey, ugly, he called down. Yeah, you look like a bad science experiment between a crab and my worst nightmares. The VOR did not appreciate that. It reared back, its muscles coiling. Ethan held his breath, and then the VOR leaped right into the trap. Ethan threw himself onto the branch, using all his weight to snap it downward. The force, combined with the VOR's momentum, sent the creature tumbling midair, its trajectory completely thrown off. It crashed into the ground with a thunderous boom, rolling violently before coming to a day. Twitching, stop. Ethan clung to the tree, panting. Hey, yes, take that, you overgrown. The Vorek twitched, then, with a sickening crunch, it staggered back onto its feet. Ethan's victory died in his throat. Oh, come on. Before the Vorek could recover, moved one moment, she was standing still. The next, she was a blur. In an inch, she was on the VOR, her movements impossibly fluid, her hands, no claws, Ethan realized, slashed across the creature's carapace, striking with inhuman precision. The Vorks shrieked and buckled beneath her assaults, drove one final strike into its skull. The Vorek went still. Ethan gaped. Okay. Yep, definitely, your kills turned silver. Eyes unreadable. You did well. Ethan barked out a laugh. I ran and then flopped onto a tree branch. I don't think that qualifies as doing well. Stepped closer, tilting her head. You adapted, you survived. That is enough. Ethan slumped against the tree. Yeah, well, if I ever get back to Earth, I am never complaining about rush hour traffic again. Studied him for a long moment, then, to his absolute shock, she extended a hand. Ethan hesitated, then slowly he took it. Her grip was cool, firm, almost reassuring. You learn quickly, she said. Ethan exhaled. Yeah, well, nothing like being almost eaten to speed up the process. His lips twitched. Then perhaps you will be ready for the next lesson. Ethan groaned. Oh, good, more near-death experiences. Turned toward the jungle, motioning for him to follow. Ethan hesitated, glancing back at the Vor's unmoving body. Then with a sigh, he trudged out after her. So, he muttered, just checking, no hard feelings about the whole I don't want to be own thing, right? Glanced at him, her silver eyes gleaming. You are mine, Ethan. Yeah, figured that was still the answer. Ethan had exactly 3 thoughts as he trudged through the jungle behind S1, his entire body axed from the life or death wrestling match with a giant alien murder crab. 2, he was deeply unsettled by how casuals had been about the whole fight, or be eaten. Lesson 3, he was never ever going to complain about leg day again. Just checking, he muttered, stepping over a route that suspiciously coiled away. As he neared, when you said, "I needed to prove myself," did you mean to you, or to the terrifying ecosystem actively trying to kill me? S didn't turn. But he swore. Her ears twitched in amusement. Both great, he sighed, because, if I'm being honest, I was really hoping for an open book test situation. They walked in silence for a while, the alien jungle pulsing with strange life. Bioluminescent vines twisted around trees, glowing softly in response to their movements. Small floating creatures zipped through the air, darting away like startled fireflies. Whenever Ethan got too close, the ground itself seemed almost aware, shifting subtly beneath his feet, adjusting to his weight. "This place is alive," he muttered, watching a patch of moss subtly retract as he stepped over it. "Like actually alive, not in the earth. Is full of nature way in the I feel like I'm walking on something that has opinions." Waze glanced at him. "You are perceptive, I'd like to think so," he said, stepping a patch of vines that definitely looked too interested in him. "So what exactly are we doing? Please tell me it doesn't involve another creature with knives for limbs." Didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stopped in a clearing and turned to face him. The twin suns filtered through the canopy, casting a surreal golden glow over her silver eyes. "You must understand this world," she said. "You must understand me." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I feel like we skipped a few steps. First I crash land, then I almost die. Then you claim me, then I get thrown at a six-legged nightmare. And now we're getting to the understanding parts." Regarded him for a long moment. "It is our way," Ethan sighed. "Of course it is." Stepped closer. "You belong to me now." "Yeah, you keep saying that," Ethan muttered, still processing. "You resist." "Well, yeah, my planet ownership usually applies to objects, not people." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm grateful, I really am, but this whole belonging thing, that's a lot." Studied him. Then, to his surprise, she crouched down and pressed a hand against the ground. The earth responded immediately. The soil rippled, shifting beneath her palm like water disturbed by a breeze. A moment later, the shifting mass rose, forming into something that made Ethan's breath catch. It was him, or at least a rough organic sculpture of him. The ground had molded itself into his shape. Messy hair, confused expression, arms crossed in hesitant defiance. Ethan stared. "Okay, that's deeply unsettling." Gestured at the figure. "This is what you see." He frowned. "I mean, yeah, that's Mrs." Silver eyes gleamed. "No." She placed her other hand on the earth. The sculpture shifted again, morphing into something else. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. The figure was still him, but different. Its stance was stronger, its expression sharper. That hesitant defiance had been replaced with something sure, something resilient. "This is what I see," is said simply. Ethan swallowed. "That's weirdly flattering. You are more than you believe." He let out a breath, rubbing his temples. "You really like throwing philosophical bombs at me." Hus tilted her head. "It is necessary, Uqua. And what happens if I don't change?" She studied him. Then she did something that sent a chill down his spine. She reached out and crushed the sculpture. The earth crumbled, dust scattering into the air. Ethan stared at the remnants, a pit forming in his stomach. "Okay, not ominous at all, sir." "Stood, you will change," he exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. "Great love." The pressure. She turned, motioning for him to follow again. "Come, there is something you must see." Ethan sighed, but trudged after her. "I swear, if this involves another monster." They walked in silence for a while, the jumble gradually shifting around them. The further they went, the stranger the landscape became. The trees here were taller, their bark shimmering with iridescent light. The air felt thicker, buzzing with an almost electrical energy. And then suddenly, they were there. Ethan stopped. Ahead of him, in the middle of the clearing, stood something he could barely process, a massive floating structure. It hovered effortlessly above the ground, its surface smooth and pulsating with an eerie organic glow. It wasn't metal, it wasn't stone, it looked alive. Ethan's breath hitched. "What is that?" Stepped beside him. "It is the heart of our world." Ethan squinted. "That's not an answer." She ignored him, walking toward the structure. Ethan hesitated, then curiosity won out. He followed. The closer he got, the stronger the buzzing in the air became. His skin tingled like the entire atmosphere was watching him. Placed a hand on the structure's surface. The moment she did, it responded. The glow intensified. The entire thing shifted, its surface rippling like disturbed water. and then suddenly a section of it opened. Revealing the deep pulsated core, Ethan felt his stomach twist. "I don't suppose this is the part where you tell me this is totally safe." Glanced back at him. "You must trust Ethan." Exhaled. "Yeah, you keep saying that." S held out a hand. Ethan stared at it then, with a deep reluctant sigh. He took it the moment their hands connected. The structure pulled them inside. Ethan had just enough time to yell, "Oh hell no," and then everything vanished for one terrifying moment. Ethan was certain he had been disassembled the instant the strange pulsating structure swallowed him. And the world collapsed, not in the traditional "oh no, the ceiling is caving" in way, but in the reality just folded in on itself like an origami nightmare way. Colors he had no names for blurred past him. The air, if it was air, felt like static crawling along his skin, sending tiny jolts through his nerves. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Ethan hit the ground with a graceless thump. How he groaned, peeling himself off the floor. "Okay, seriously, if that was some kind of teleportation, I give it a solid 1 star. Would not recommend." CRA, of course, landed effortlessly beside him, not even remotely phased. She studied him with that infuriatingly unreadable expression. "You are unharmed." Ethan glared up at her, physically sure, emotionally. "I think my soul is still catching up." Extended a hand to help him up. He eyed it wearily before finally taking it. Her grip was firm, steady in a way that was almost grounding. Then he looked around and promptly forgot how to breathe. They were inside the floating structure, or at least Ethan thought they were. The walls pulsed with a soft bioluminescent glow, shifting in color as if responding to their presence. The space itself was massive, far bigger than the exterior had suggested. It wasn't metal or stone or anything he could compare to Earth materials. It felt organic, like they were standing inside something alive. "I regret everything," Ethan muttered. Sira walked forward, as if none of this was horrifyingly surreal. "This is the core." Ethan hesitated before following, trying not to overthink the fact that the floor beneath him moved. It wasn't like walking on solid ground, more like standing on the surface of a giant breathing lung. "Yeah, okay," he said, rubbing his temples. "Totally normal, just standing inside a giant glowing whatever this is. Definitely not having an existential crisis." Stopped before what looked like a central nexus. The walls curled inward, converging around a swirling translucent sphere suspended in the air. Inside the sphere, strands of glowing energy twisted and pulsed in rhythmic patterns, like an impossible equation constantly rewriting itself. "This is the heart of my worlds," said the core. "Is our past, our present, our knowledge." Ethan stared. "So what? It's a database, like a giant alien hard drive." His ears twitched, and he was starting to suspect that meant amusement. "It is more than that. It is memory. It is life." Ethan folded his arms. "Cool love, the poetic ambiguity, super helpfuls." Exhaled through her nose. He was pretty sure it was the alien equivalent of this idiot, and placed her hand on the sphere. The moment she did, the entire room shifted. Light exploded outward, cascading in waves. Suddenly, the walls weren't just pulsing, they were moving, rearranging themselves like shifting puzzle pieces. Images flickered through the air around them like holograms made of liquid light. Ethan turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. He saw towering cities carved into cliffsides, their spires glowing like stars against the twilight. He saw ships, sleek, elegant crafts, slicing through the sky, their propulsion leaving trails of iridescent energy. He saw people, or at least cis people, tall, graceful, long-eared figures, moving with a fluidity that felt almost otherworldly. Some more elaborate armor, others flowing robes that shimmered like liquid silver. And then the images changed. The cities burned, the ships fell from the sky. The people fought. Ethan's stomach twisted. What happened? His expression darkened. "We were not always alone." The hologram shifted again, revealing something that made Ethan's skin crawl. Dark, looming figures, not like cis people. Something else. Their forms were jagged, their bodies shifting in unnatural ways. As if reality itself struggled to define them, they moved in waves, engulfing everything in their path. A war. Cis people had lost. Ethan swallowed hard. Jesus removed her hand from the sphere, and the images faded. The pulsing light dimmed, leaving them in the eerie quiet of the core's presence. "We survived." said softly, "But we are no longer what we were." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "And what does this have to do with me?" Turned to him, her silver eyes searching his face. "Because you are here, and that means something." Ethan let out a weak laugh. "I hate to break it to you, but my crash landing wasn't exactly destiny. It was bad luck." SRA tilted her head. "You believe in luck?" He hesitated. "I believe in screwing up spectacularly, if that counts." She stepped closer, studying him with unsettling intensity. "Perhaps the core will decide." Ethan blinked. "Wait, the core?" As in the weird glowing, definitely sentient alien orb. As SRA gestured toward the sphere, Ethan took a step back. "Yeah, okay, see, I don't really do cosmic judgment. I barely passed jury duty on Earth's." Simply waited. Ethan sighed. Of course. I have to touch the mysterious, probably dangerous alien artifact." Because why not? Bracing himself for whatever fresh horror awaited, he reached out, and the moment his fingers made contact, the core reacted. A surge of energy shot through him, not painful but vast. Ethan gasped as images flooded his mind, not just images, but thoughts that weren't his voices, speaking in a language he somehow understood. And then he saw himself not as he was, but as he could be, stronger, faster, more than human. Something inside him clicked like a door he hadn't known was locked had just swung open. Then just as suddenly it stopped. Ethan stumbled back, gasping. Holies caught him before he fell. "It has chosen." Ethan panted. "Chosen what?" Sark lips curved slightly. "You are more than you believe." Ethan swallowed, still reeling from whatever the hell had just happened. "Yeah," he muttered. "You keep saying that." Ethan sat on the floor of the core chamber, his back against the pulsing, not quite solid wall, trying to process the absolute madness that had just happened to him. "All right," he breathed, rubbing his temples. Latent recap. "I crash. I almost die. You save me. I fight a giant alien murder crab. Now a glowing, possibly sentient energy orb has scanned my brain and given me an existential crisis. Did I miss anything?" Syrah's silver eyes studied him with something almost like amusement. "You adapt well." Ethan let out a dry laugh. "That's a very generous way of describing mild panic spirals laced with sarcasm." Stepped closer, her long ears twitching slightly as she observed him. "The core has shown you something." Ethan hesitated, staring at his hands. His fingers still tingled like they had been dipped in static electricity. "Yeah," he muttered, "it showed me, except not me. More like the director's cut of me, the special edition with all the cool upgrades." Is tilted her head. "Then you understand." "Oh yeah," Ethan deadpanned. "I totally understand why a glowing alien brain ball decided to fill my head with images of myself, looking like some kind of intergalactic action hero." Crystal Clears regarded him for a long moment before finally sitting beside him. The core chamber pulsed softly around them, the energy within it almost listening. She spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "The core does not show possibilities without reason." Ethan frowned. "So what it thinks I'm supposed to be, this version of myself?" Nodded. Ethan let his head fall back against the wall. "Yeah, well, the core clearly has high expectations. I barely made it through high school gym class, and now it wants me to be space." Tarzan Sai's lips quirked slightly. It was the closest thing to a smile he had seen from her. Ethan sighed. "All right, say I do believe that the core saw something in me." "What now?" Stood smoothly, offering him a hand. "Now we see if you can become what it has shown." Ethan eyed her hand like it might bite him. "You do realize I'm very squishy compared to you, right? You are resilient." "That's a fancy way of saying stubborn idiot who refuses to die." She did not argue with another sigh. Ethan took her hand and let her pull them up. "Fine," he muttered, "but if this involves me fighting another murder beast, I am legally allowed to complain the entire time." Simply turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. "Yeah," Ethan muttered, following after her. "Didn't think that would work." They emerged from the core chamber into the jungle again, the twin suns lower in the sky casting golden hues over the alien landscape. Ethan took a deep breath, the air crisp and strangely electric after what had just happened, led him further into the dense foliage, moving with the effortless grace that made Ethan feel even more like an awkward earthling with questionable survival instincts. So he asked, stepping over a route that looked way too sentient for his liking, "What exactly am I training for?" Didn't answer right away. Instead She gestured ahead. Ethan followed her gaze and immediately regretted all his life choices. There, perched on a jagged rock formation, was something that looked suspiciously like a nest, a very large nest, and in that nest was, oh hell no. Ethan groaned. A creature the size of a small car shifted within the nest, its feathered body shimmering with an iridescent glow. It had wings, large, sharp-edged things that looked as much like blades as they did feathers. Its elongated head turned slightly, revealing piercing violet eyes and a sharp-hooked beak. Ethan took a step back. That's a dragon bird. That's literally a dragon bird. Sierra nodded. It is a Vashi. They are strong, intelligent. Their bond is rare, but unbreakable. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. Let me guess, I have to make friends with that thing. Not friends, sir, corrected. A bond. Ethan laughed humorlessly. Right. And if it doesn't want a bond with me, considered this, then it will kill you. Ethan closed his eyes. Awesome. Love that stepped closer, her silver gaze steady. You are not weak, Ethan. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped, because the truth was back on Earth. He had always felt weak, always felt like he was just surviving, not really living, and here he was in a world that had already tried to kill him, being told he had the potential to be something more. Maybe it was insane. Maybe it was reckless, but maybe, just maybe, he wanted to see if it was true. He let out a slow breath. All right, he muttered. Leighton, do this. Nodded once. Good. Ethan took a step forward. The Vasher's violet eyes snapped toward him, its body tensing, and for the first time since crashing on this planet, Ethan had one single thought: please don't eat me. Ethan had never flown before. Well, technically he had, but not like this. Crashing a spaceship at terminal velocity into an alien jungle didn't count as flying. This, however, this was something else entirely. The Vash, whom Ethan had reluctantly named Razor, because the giant dragon bird thing was very sharp in all the wrong places, had accepted him. Not immediately, of course. There had been a lot of staring, some aggressive wing flapping, and a moment where Ethan was fairly certain Razor was deciding whether to bond with him or eat him. But somehow, against all odds, Ethan had earned its trust now as he clung to Razor's back, the wind screaming past him, twin suns sinking into the horizon. He realized this was insane. This is insane. Ethan shouted, his voice lost in the wind from below. SRA watched, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Razor's massive wings cut through the sky, slicing through golden clouds, each powerful beat sending them higher. Ethan had no resins, no saddle, just his grip and a very fragile sense of control. This is not how flight school works, he yelled. Razor let out a piercing cry, banking sharply. Ethan dropped as they spiraled downward, the jungle rushing up to meet them. Oh great. I tamed a flying murder beast just to die on impact at the last second. Razor leveled out, soaring low over the treetops. The rush of exhilaration almost made Ethan forget his impending doom. Almost when they finally landed, Ethan slid off Razor's back, his legs barely cooperating. Approached, tilting her head. You live. Ethan put his hands on his knees, sucking in air to find livings. His ears twitched, and he was pretty sure that meant she was amused. You did well. Ethan straightened, glancing back at Razor. The creature huffed, ruffling its shimmering feathers before stalking off into the trees. So Ethan said, rubbing the back of his neck, that's it, right? I passed the big alien survival test. You're not going to throw me at a bigger death monster. Studied him for a moment before finally speaking. You are ready. Ethan blinked. Wait, what's? Gestured toward the sky, where a familiar sight loomed in the distance, the wreckage of his ship barely visible beyond the jungle canopy. You said you wished to return to your world. She said, now you can. Ethan's breath caught. For weeks escape had been his only goal. Survive, get off this rock, go home. But now, standing here, the weight of her words settling in something inside him twisted. He looked at the way the fading sunlight caught in her silver eyes, at the way she stood calm, steady, unshaken by everything they had been through. She had saved him, trained him, pushed him to be more than he ever thought possible. And for the first time since crashing here, he wasn't sure if leaving was what he wanted. Right, he said slowly. Back to Earth. Studied him, her expression unreadable. That is what you want, was it? He thought of his old life, of bills, of fluorescent office lights, of a world where he was just another nobody scraping by. Then he thought of this world, of the endless skies, The bioluminescent forests, the feeling of flying through golden clouds on the back of a creature that shouldn't exist, the feeling of standing beside his throat felt tight, and if I stays didn't answer. Immediately instead, she took a step closer. You were claimed, she said softly. You belong here, if that is what you choose. Ethan exhaled a shaky laugh. No pressure. She tilted her head. You are free to leave, but know this: if you stay, you are no longer just a worry, you are one of us. Ethan looked at the sky again, at the wreckage of the life he had before. Then he looked at her, and suddenly the choice wasn't hard at all. He smiled. Yeah, I think I already made my decisions. His lips curved slightly, a small rare thing, but for her it was enough. Ethan let out a breath. Guess I should start figuring out how to be an honorary alien. You are already on your way, she said. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, well, let's just hope I don't die trying. Placed a hand over his firm and steady. Not while you are mine. For once Ethan didn't argue, because maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was meant to be.